A very good afternoon. A very good afternoon. I am CA Yamini Gujar, moderator of this webinar, and we are delighted to welcome you all in the webinar being hosted by CCLEI and NPO Committee of ICAI. It is my pleasure to be a moderator in a Know Your Law series 35 webinar on scheduled offences under the Unlawful Activities and Weapons of Mass Destruction Act on 16th November 2023 from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Been organized by the Committee on Commercial Law, Economic Advisory and NPO Cooperative of ICAI. In a short while, we will be starting the webinar, and I would like to appraise you about the CCLEA and NPO committee. This committee is focused to encourage the chartered accountants to shape strategy and policy that unlocks economic, financial, and social value while combining analytical foresight with commercial acumen. One of the core areas of this committee is to serve the multifunctional task of analysis, knowledge dissemination, inputs to regulators on policy formulation, to develop and publish technical guidance, background materials, and to create awareness for the professional opportunities for chartered accountants in commercial law, economic advisory, and NPO cooperatives. Our eminent speaker would be talking on the schedule offences under the Unlawful Activities and Weapons of Mass Destruction Act in this webinar, and we hope that same would be beneficial for to all the members. I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for today, CA Uday Kulkarni sir. He is a practicing chartered accountant with a professional experience of 27 years. A fellow member of ICAI, Uday sir is a certified internal auditor and also a CISA, that is Certified Information System Auditor. He has also qualified insolvency professional under the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of India. Uday sir has completed digital forensic course and is also a certified data privacy solution engineer. His focus areas are information system audit, security, cyber security, forensic accounting, and fraud investigation. IBC advisory and data privacy, audit of data privacy. CA Uday has a wide experience in a various types of information system audit, external audit, internal audit, fraud investigation. He has also appeared before the NCLT as authorized representative. Apart from practicing, he is also a national faculty for forensic accounting and fraud detection course of ICAI and also a national faculty for concurrent audit of bank certification course of ICAI. He has imparted a training on various aspects of forensic accounting and investigation, money laundering, legal aspects, and the cybersecurity in Sri Lanka, Nepal C Institute, RBI Academy, National Forensic Science University, SFIO, SBI Credit Risk Academy, NIBM, etc. He is a member of expert group formed for forensic accounting and investigation standards of ICAI. We welcome you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you for your kind introduction, Yamini. And I think now I can take it forward with your permission.
Sir. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So thanks once again for that introduction and all other words at the beginning.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
For all the participants, very good evening and wishing you all a very happy Diwali and the festival season. And amongst that, today we are gathered here to discuss about certain important aspects under the PMLA and the recent developments that has been taken place under that WMD Act. I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully it is visible to all of you. Yamini, could you please confirm that it is visible? My PPTs are visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot. So today we are discussing one important act which is mentioned under the Money Laundering PMLA Act that is called as an UAPA. WMD is not a part of the schedule offences, but the CAs, the chartered accountants in practice, they have to mandatorily we make compliance of this newly inserted section under the WMD. What is that and what is its relevance with this PMLA? We will discuss in a short. Since it is a series related to the money laundering and the schedule offences related to that, in the last week or sometime back, fortnight, we covered certain schedule offences. Those were related to the Indian Penal Code and corruption related, prevention of corruption related, act related offences. And also, I think we covered about the corporate fraud under Section 447 of the Companies Act. Today we are going to deal with the another schedule offences, but those who have joined today only and those who were not there at the earlier series, for them we need to give them a brief introduction about what we are going to talk about, what is the offences we are going to talk about, how it is going to link with the offence of money laundering. So, a couple of slides I will have to repeat. So, the first thing we all have to know about what is offense of money laundering. So, if you see the section 3 of the Money Laundering Act, PMLA Act 2002, it is talking about the offense of money laundering, right? And the offense of money laundering is related to the proceeds of crime. I think many of the chartered accountants are now aware about the terminology of the proceeds of crime. So, offense of money laundering is related to the proceeds of crime. Anyone who is directly or indirectly involved into the certain activities related to the proceeds of crime, then all of them are going to be charge sheeted under the offenses of money laundering. So these activities could range from concealment related to the proceeds of crime, possession of the proceeds of crime, acquisition of the proceeds of crime, use of the proceeds of crime, or projecting or claiming it as an untainted property. So anything which is related to the proceeds of crime, any abatement related to the proceeds of crime, any advisory related to the proceeds of crime, all that will be the part of the offense of money laundering, right? And it has nothing to do with the circular which is issued on the 3rd May 2023 or the 9th May 2023, because this act is older one. The act is of 2002. An offense of money laundering is applicable to every citizen of India, like the IPC is applicable, Indian Penal Code offenses are applicable. Similarly, the offense of money laundering is applicable. It is across the country and to every citizen. So anyone who is dealing with the proceeds of crime, he or she might be charge sheeted under this offense of money laundering. So there is a connection between the offense of money laundering and it is connected with the proceeds of crime. So one would like to know what is the proceeds of crime, right? So proceeds of crime is, any property. Basically, proceeds of crime is basically the property, and that property is derived directly or indirectly by the person by conducting some of the offenses, right, or the criminal activity which are mentioned as a schedule offenses. So, proceeds of crime is again linked with the criminal activity related to the scheduled offenses. Property could be of any kind. It could be tangible, intangible, copyright, all that kind of a property that is dealt with under this proceeds of crime. That is first part. Second part is that even the property which is used for the commission of such scheduled offences, and that is also treated as a proceeds of crime. So proceeds of crime is related with the property generated either by committing the scheduled offences or which are used for the commissioning of these scheduled offences. Now, one needs to understand here that the offense of money laundering is a continuous kind of an offense. Means what? So suppose somebody has generated a money, a property out of a bribe, and that property is getting circulated. It is getting transferred from X to Y, Y to Z, Z to P, P to Q. All this time when it is transferring, it is getting channelizing with various ways or with various institutions. And if somebody is involved in all these things, the money laundering offenses is going to be continuously happening. So it is not like that the excess generated the property through the schedule offenses, and he is only the responsible person for that. It's not like that. He is of course responsible for that, but apart from that, when it is getting circulated for the number of times, all those number of persons which are getting involved into such or in relation with the proceeds of crime, all of them are well connected with these offenses of money laundering. So that is what we have. It is not a one time offense, it is an evolving offense, it is a continuous kind of an offenses till the time that proceeds of crime being used by, played with, or by circulated with, or anything which is taking place with that property which is known as in proceeds of crime. Now, as far as the proceeds of crime is talking about the scheduled offenses. So, what is the definition of scheduled offenses? So, basically, the scheduled offenses are those offenses which are prescribed under this PMLA Act under the schedule. So, if you look at the schedule which is there under this PMLA Act, there are three parts of the scheduled offenses. There are scheduled offenses under Part A, there are scheduled offenses under Part B, and there are scheduled offenses under Part C. Right. So there are three types of scheduled offenses, you can say, which are considered for this money laundering activity. Many of the times, the members may put the question that what would be the amount when the money laundering act will be attracted. So only for the offenses which are specified under Part B of the scheduled offenses, where the monetary amount is fixed as 1 crore rupees or above, but for the schedule offences under Part A and the schedule offences under Part C, there is no such monetary limit. Even the minimum amount that could be attract this provision of PMLA, or the any highest amount that would also attract the provisions of the PMLA. So as the schedule offences under Part A and schedule offences under Part C, there is no such prescribed monetary limit. Only in case of an Part B, the monetary limit is prescribed as rupees 1 crore or more. Right. Now, if you look at the list of the acts under which the offences are considered as a schedule offences. So, offences under the Indian Penal Code, which we discussed in the last series. Then there is an offences under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, that is UAPA. That is what we are going to discuss right now in this webinar. Then there is offences under the Prevention of Corruption Act. There are the offences under the Securities and Exchange Board of India, SEBI Act, Customs Act, right? Copyright Act, Trademark Act, Information Technology Act, Corporate Fraud. So all these offences, in some cases, not all the offences under the specific laws are treated as a schedule offences, because we discussed that there are certain offences under the IPC. Not all the offences are considered as a schedule offences, right? So even we are talking about the scheduled offences under Part A. As such, there is no monetary limit, and these are the acts. Almost 28 to 30 acts are covered here. Offences under those acts are covered here as a scheduled offences under Part A. So that is Part A scheduled offences. Under Part B of the scheduled offences, there is only one act, that is Customs Act, and one section or one offence under Section 132, which is related to the false declaration or the false documentation, that is covered as a Schedule B offences under the PMLA. Schedule C or Part C of the schedule is talking about the cross-border kind of an offences, which is having the implication of the cross-border type, and the offences against the property, which are mentioned under the chapter 17 of the IPC, and the offences related to the willful attempt to evade the tax penalties under the section 51 of the black money, undisclosed foreign income and assets imposition of tax act 2015. So these are we normally call as a schedule offenses under part A, B, C. As I said, we are going to talk about the act which is under part A, and that act is known as UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, And the second act, you will not find any mention of that WMD Act, weapons of mass destruction related. And as I said, that is not part of the schedule offenses, but the compliance of that is relevant for the money laundering aspects. And I will connect you with all these things because for chartered accountants, those who are going to become the reporting entity, they will have to make certain compliances under Section 1112 of this PMLA. But the WMD is going to applicable to whole chartered accountants, irrespective of whether they are reporting entity or not. So this difference one has to attend. What is the risk before directly going into that UAPA? Again, what is the risk of money laundering? So it may be possible that during providing the services, which could be related to the financial consultancy, which could be related to the taxation consultancy, which may be related to the generation of funds as a project finance, arrangement of the funds for the project purpose. The most important risk could be there for while incorporating the trust, companies, LLPs, partnership firm, or any association of persons. Because there, the complex group company structure one might not be aware about, and creating such a large network, which is very complex one as a group company, the necessity of that and the undergoing activities under that network, that may create certain red flags about the creation of such complex group company network or structure, and diversification of certain funds, which could be not in all cases, but which could be of money laundered kind of funds, and those things might not be carefully looked upon when we are providing the services. And that's the reason I think in 2017, our institute ICAI has made it compulsory, mandated all the chartered accountants, practicing chartered accountants, to get the KYC done of all their clients. And still it is going on because now, because of the notification of the 3rd May 2023, if you are conducting certain notified activities, there are 5 activities. Of course, not all the services are covered there, but those chartered accountants who are providing those notified activities, those are going to covered as a reporting entity, and they will have to submit the report to the FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit of India. But along with that, they will also have to do KYC, know your customer, and KYC is crossing now limits of this identification and address group, the profile of your customer, which is very important one when we are providing the services to our client. What is the profile? What is the business profile? What is the individual profile? What is his reputation? On that basis, perhaps we will have to do the risk classification of our customer, of our client, and we will have to monitor the transactions which are happening, to which our services are related to. So that is the risk which every practicing unit of chartered accountants now has to consider while dealing with their or while providing these types of the services, right? Now, before going again directly into the UAPA, because this act you might have been not heard in general, and that is correct one, because this is not an act with which any chartered accountants come across with in the normal circumstances, and one can understand that. But to bring the logic, what is the relation of this UAPA? Why we are discussing on this forum as a chartered accountant? That needs to be connected with. So FATF, that is Financial Action Task Force, which is a worldwide global agency which is in existence for these money laundering aspects, and there are countries which are members of this FATF. India is a member of that FATF. So that FATF is giving certain recommendations, and those recommendations needs to be implemented by the member countries. So India is also a member of that FATF, and India is also compulsorily be required to make the compliances of this FATF recommendation. And there is a review or the supervision which is conducted by this FATF also. So one of the recommendation related to this money laundering aspect, that is known as in targeted financial sanctions, or we call it as in TFS. So targeted financial sanctions are related to the terrorism and the terrorist financing. So there are two different aspects. So TFS is related to the terrorism also, and TFS is related to the terrorist financing also. And that is not only of the recommendation of the FATF, but FATF is recommending these targeted financial sanctions because the United Nations Security Council, they have passed two important resolutions. Resolution number 1267 in 1999 and resolution number 1373 that is passed in 2001. In the future slides I'm going to discuss about that resolution of 1373 which is passed in 2001, and accordingly the member countries they have to take a strict action under this targeted financial sanctions TFS. What does that mean? So targeted financial sanctions means to freeze the funds or the assets related to these terrorist organizations or the persons who are involved into these terrorist activities, to ensure that the finance or the funds may not be directly or indirectly easily be available to these groups, terrorist persons, or terrorist individuals who are associated with these terrorism activities. So the basic aim under this targeted financial sanction, first one is to freeze the funds or the assets, freeze the financial transaction. And the second step is not to make the funds easily available for such activities. And that recommendation needs to be implemented by the member countries. Now, the compliance is, as I said, mandatory. It is coming out of the United Nations Security Council resolution, and these are the two important the resolution which are passed, which I will discuss in a minute or now. Another thing which, as a practicing member or in generality, we should be aware about, because many of the time we are using this terminology of terrorist financing. But what is the exactly meaning of this terrorist financing? One may be aware about that. So there is a terrorist financing convention, and the terrorist financing convention, that is TFC, defines what is the terrorist financing, because we are going to deal with that finance aspect related to the terrorist purpose. Now, all these acts which we are going to discuss here under that schedule offenses, basically this UAPA or even the WMD, which is we are focusing on the financial aspects which are there and which are getting connected probably with these terrorist activities. So, what is terrorist financing? So, any person which commits an offense under this convention, and that person by any means is directly, indirectly, unlawfully, willfully is collecting the funds, and that funds are going to be used for the activities which is of a terrorist nature, which is going to cause the death of or the serious bodily injury to the civilian, going to destroy the properties, and etc. etc. So all these things are covered under the definition of this terrorist financing. So this is an important concept of terrorist financing we should have in mind. Another concept which one has to understand, that is proliferation of this financing. So what is proliferation of financing? So proliferation of financing is providing the funds or the financial services, right? And those funds are used to manufacture, to acquire, to possess, to develop, export, transport, transfer, stockpiling, which is of all is of related to the nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons. So proliferation financing is related to the manufacturing of the nuclear, chemical, biological weapons, acquisition of such weapons, stocking, finance related to the piling of the stock of these weapons, transport related to these chemical weapons. So all these things which are collected or correlated with these weapons, which are actually used in the terrorist activities, and with those use of these weapons, the mass destruction, serious injuries, or the death is happen under the terrorist activities. So financing or funding for these nuclear, chemical, or biological weapons needs to be stopped at some point of time, and that is the purpose that these things are developed, and that countries are taking actions to ensure that anyone who is related with these financial services, financial activities, they should be aware about this proliferation financing. They should be aware about how the funds are going to be used by this terrorist organization for acquiring of these weapons and further making the destructions of the property or life of the persons. So now coming to this UAPA, right? So Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, that is UAPA. So UAPA, there are, if you go to the part A of the schedule of offences of these money laundering activities, these are the offences under the UAPA. These are the sections and these are the offences under the UAPA, which are disclosed as in schedule offences under the PMLA. So any property which is generated by this or handled by this could be a part of the money laundering related money laundering related offenses. So there are certain offenses like declaration of association as an unlawful, penalty for being a member of unlawful association, penalty for dealing with the funds of unlawful association, right? So there are multiple offenses, multiple sections of this UAPA which is covered as a schedule offenses. As far as the our area of practicing is we consider, then if you look at those red fonted offenses or the red fonted sections, which we need to understand as a part of proliferation of financing is concerned. So if you look at, we are going to discuss about what is this unlawful association, what is the penalty for dealing with the funds of an unlawful association, what is the punishment for this. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the punishment part because I'm not going to talk about from that legal point of view, but how we are going to connect it and how it should be avoided for the raising funds for the terrorist act. Then there is an important section, that is section 18, about the punishment for the conspiracy, punishment for holding the proceeds of terrorism, and offense relating to the raising of funds for the terrorist organization. Why this discussion is again important? Because as a practicing chartered accountant, we are providing services to the a number of legal entities, not always an individual person, but we are providing services to the number of legal entities. And whether these legal entities are any way connected with this unlawful association or not, that is the risk which we carry. Of course, not in every sector, not in every geographical location, one can say that that is going to happen. There are certain area, there are certain geographical, you can say, places where there is a high probability that the members who are practicing in those areas, they may be very cautious about that any company, any other legal entity, which may be connected as an unlawful association. And to address that risk, again, the KYC, the screening, the profiling, profile matching, what are the transactions are happening under our service related areas, all these things one has to look into, and that's why only the few of the sections we are going to discuss, because that is having a direct connections with the servicing areas which we are going to provide services as a practicing member. So what are the objectives of this UAPA? Okay, So UAPA is again the act is passed to have or to achieve the objectives which are mentioned in the various United Nations Security Council resolution. So you can find out that at the beginning at itself it starts with the 1373, which is an important resolution passed on the 20th September 2001 under Chapter 7. And then there are other resolutions are also there, which is talking about the same thing, the targeted financial sanction, that is TFS. So Act is one on a way, it is going to deal with this unlawful association and offenses related to that unlawful association on the one hand, but on the other hand, this UAPA is also going to take some measures, adopt some measures as per the requirement of the United Nations Security Council resolutions, which requires the stoppage of this proliferation of financing, and under that the targeted financial sanctions, which requires to freeze the assets or the economic resources and make the funds difficult to be provided. It should be provided with not an ease to this terrorist organization or the terrorist individuals, right? So that they can generate this or they can acquire these weapons of mass destruction. So that is overall objectives of this UAV if you look into that. Now, as I talking frequently about that resolution number 1373 that is of 2001. So what is that resolution is actually? So this the resolution itself is talking about the prevention of financing part for the terrorist acts. So this is directly aiming at the proliferation of financing for the terrorist purposes, and as to take the preventive measures or to suppress the financing for the terrorist act, the resolution itself suggests that the criminalization of the collection of the funds or support within the country which could be used for these terrorist purposes. And whenever such activities of funding for these terrorist activities is coming to the knowledge, then without the delay, the funds should be or the assets should be freezed, and there should be uh, legal action should be initiated to those persons, to those unlawful associations which are engaged in such kind of an activities. The another objective of this United Nations Security Council resolution, if you look at, is they are talking about prohibit their nationals or any persons and entities within their territories from making any funds, financial assets, or economic so resources, even the financial services available direct or indirect. As I said, we are dealing with various entities, and then I'm not saying that all the legal entities, all the persons are going to be involved into such activities, but as a service provider, as a financial service provider, we should be aware about the risk that this could be a possibility, and that is one of the important purpose behind the KYC, know your customer, because we are many time talking about what is the requirement of the KYC. Under the KYC, we need to find out any link of such individual or activities. And another purpose is that under the KYC, many of the banks, many of the financial institutions, and now even the chartered accountants, they have to carry out the screening of their customers, of their clients with the list which is designated. What is designated? Designated means the persons or the entities will be declared as an unlawful association or which could be associated with these terrorist activities. So United Nations, they may declare the list. That is number one. And the second is that the specific country that also can declare the list of these designated persons or entities which are having association with these terrorist activities. So when we are talking about conducting the KYC, know your customer, apart from this identification and address proof, we will have to match the names of our clients. And for that purpose, we'll have to screen, we'll have to run that list, and we'll have to search whether is there any possibility of these of our clients may be included in that list or not. Of course, that list will be made available by the government, and also it will be made available by the financial intelligence unit. That list is also available at the United Nations site. So all these things are there, and this list needs to be carefully looked into so as to avoid the risk, so as to confirm that none of those entities, none of those persons are actually on board with us as a client, right? And that's the basic thing which this resolution of 1373 of 2001 is talking about, right? So it is again related with the proliferation of financing, TFS, targeted financial sanctions, and and carry out the screening of these clients with this list. Again, what is terrorist activities? That is defined under this UAPA. What we call is as a terrorist activity. So, what is the terrorist act? That needs to be defined as an offense, and that is what is defined under this UAPA also. So, in normal, we know what is terrorist activities. To summarize with that, yes, of course, that is all the things which are we understand all those things or incidents are included in this definition or in this offense of the terrorist act under the UAPA. So there should be intention to threaten or likely to create the threat to the unity, integrity, security. Security, not only the geographical security, but even they have included the economic security or sovereignty of India. Right. So that aspect we have to look into, because normally when we think about the terrorist activities, either it is related with the geographical security, people's security, but now they have included this economic security because the property is getting damaged, the economic disturbances are getting created by various ways, and that's why there is an intention or the threat for this economic security also. Then that is also treated as a terrorist. And why this is done? Because there is an intention to strike or error in a large section of the people, that not necessarily in India, but in India along with in any other foreign countries. And how that could be done? By using these weapons, this by using these mass destructive weapons. This could be bombs, this could be other explosive substances, inflammable substances, right? Firearms or any other weapons like the gases or other chemicals. That is, that's why they have clubbed that as an biological weapons, nuclear weapons, right? That right. And because of use of such weapons, and because of this terrorist act, what is going to happen? That is going to happen the death or injury to any person, damage to the property, destruction of any supplies or services which is essential to the community in India or the foreign countries, damage to the monetary stability of India by way of production of or smuggling or circulating some counterfeit Indian paper currency coins, damage or destruction of any property in India or foreign country which is used for the defense purpose in India, right? So overall, what normally the terrorists are doing the destruction related to. So all these things are considered in this definition of offense of related to the terrorist act. And anything related to the economic security, anything related to the funding or financing for these activities, that is proliferation of financing, and towards that, the targeted financial sanction TFS is working around by freezing all these funds. As we discussed under the PMLA, the proceeds of crime, that is so commonly known as a POC. Similarly, under this UAPA, there is one terminology that is called as the proceeds of terrorism, POT. So, proceeds of terrorism is on the similar line of the proceeds of crime, but the basic difference is that the proceeds of crimes are derived from the schedule offenses, whereas the proceeds of terrorism is related with the terrorist act. So all kinds of properties which have been derived or obtained from commission of this terrorist act, right, or which have been acquired through the funds traceable to the terrorist act, or any property which is going to be used or intended to be used for the terrorist act. All this is going to commonly known as a POT. Right. I'm once again repeating. There is a difference between the proceeds of crime and the proceeds of terrorism. The proceeds of terrorism is a POT. So any property, not necessarily the monetary property, property means all types of the property, which is going to be used for the terrorist purposes, that is called as proceeds of crime, or which is acquired, which is derived, which is obtained by commissioning of the Terrorist Act. And Terrorist Act, as we discussed in the earlier section 15 of the UAPA, which defines the offense of Terrorist Act. So any property generated out of that, or any property going to be used for the terrorist purposes, that is going to be called as a POT, that is proceeds of terrorism. Now, what is unlawful activity? So far we have discussed under the UAPM, there is terrorist act that is defined as an offense. Then what is a POT, that is proceeds of terrorism, and all this is on the basis of objectives, which is related to the United Nations Security Council resolution, which is talking about freezing of the assets or the funds or the economic resources, and not easily making these funds available to the terrorist groups, terrorist organizations, so that they can able to produce, purchase, or and use the weapons, biological weapons, chemical weapons, which are of a mass destruction nature. So, what is unlawful activity? That is again defined under the UAP. I'm discussing that because unless and otherwise you come to know about all this terminology, you will not able to find out the importance of the screening of the names again that designated list, and why these finance related aspects are now going to be a crucial one, because we have already considered that the economic security is also considered in the definition of the terrorist act. And looking ahead in future, the risk is that now the terrorist groups, they may be coming to know that if the economic security, economic or financial world or financial system of the country is disturbed, that is all going to damage the economy of the country. That is one part. And second part is that parallel running financial or funding activity, which is going to boost for this purchasing of weapons, which is going to be used for the test. So all without understanding all these connections and the terminologies, one may not understand the importance of the KYC and the related screening of the designated persons or the entities. So, what is unlawful activity? So, it is any action taken by the individual or association, right, which is intended, which is supported by any claim to bring about on the ground what's the cessation or the cessation of the part on the terrorist part of the country, right? So that is going to be happen with the terrorist purposes, claiming, unclaiming of certain part, geographical area, and all the that is a great risk to the sovereignty and the integrity, territorial integrity of India. So no one can challenge that certain part be of a country or not be of a country. All that things. If somebody is going to discuss about intending about, that could be an unlawful activity. Unlawful association. That is what again one of the important concept. So unlawful association is an association which is having the object of any unlawful activity, which is encouraging or aiding the persons to undertake any unlawful activity, and which is also having the objective to conduct certain offenses which are there under section 53 153A and 153 of the Indian Penal Code, or they may encourage the other person to undertake that offenses, right? I'm not going legally into the details of that because we are not going to be that much legally associated with that, but our aim is to understand whether our customers or whether our clients, those are falling under this unlawful association, and we are not able to identify on ourselves, and that's why the designated list needs to be screened out. So any unlawful association will declare that any association, any legal entity, any person is of unlawful association. So that will be done by the central government. Right. So there is a procedure which is defined under this UAP Act, that by which the central government has the authority on their own investigation, on their own opinion, that any organization or any association, any legal entity, they may declare that as an unlawful association. Right. So and they will that will be disclosed by the notification in the official gazette, and that official gazette also disclosed the grounds because of which that particular entity, that particular person has been disclosed as an unlawful association. So that is a total government authority, and government will declare that as an unlawful association, and that they will carry out the procedure. The procedure priority is also mentioned in this UAP Act, but as I said, we are not going to deal in the legality of that things, but we are going to deal with the funds and funds related activities of this unlawful association, and that is what we have to consider, we have to understand here in our discussion. So section 7 of this act has given a power to the central government to prohibit the use of the funds of an unlawful association, and that is which we need to again understand carefully. So once the government declares that a particular association, particular legal entity, particular individual, particular person of any nature, person is having the same definition as all of we know. It includes the companies, the trust, and all other things, which I hope every practicing chartered accountants they are aware about. So once the central government declared that a particular individual, particular legal entity is an unlawful association, then there are certain powers which is related to the funds of that unlawful association. So once it is declared, then the person who is having the custody of money of this unlawful association, any securities of this unlawful association, or any credits which are being used or intended to be used for the purpose of this unlawful association, then the government may prohibit any transactions of these things, or these properties once it is declared as an unlawful association. So government can prohibit such person from paying, delivering, transferring, otherwise dealing in any other manner with such money, properties, securities, or credits, and immediately that person has to deposit that, and to where to deposit, what is the procedure, all that things have been detailed discussed under this UAP Act. As far as the customer, suppose unlikely that should not happen, I pray for that, but unlikely if suppose one of our client found to be listed in this unlawful association list, or when we accepted that particular client or particular person as a legal entity, as a valid client, and subsequently the government has declared that particular client as an unlawful association, then immediately we have to keep in mind the provision of this section 7, because under the section 7, the government may prohibit any dealing with the properties of any money or the properties, securities, or credits of this unlawful association. And any financial services are also required to be stopped immediately with that point of time. The reporting is, of course, required. So all these provisions are importantly being considered when we are providing the services. Now, if suppose somebody contravenes the provisions of this section 7, then there is a punishment part is also there. So any contra and that schedule offenses has included this section 11. So suppose unfortunately the client is declared as an unlawful association, even after disclosure of unlawful association, if any practicing member is continuously providing services dealing with the properties of that unlawful association, then it is going to contravene the section 7 provision, and then they are coming into then they are going to attract the provision of section 11. And once the section 11 provisions are going to be attracted, so there would be the action under this UAP Act, as well as Section 11 is disclosed as in schedule offenses under the Money Laundering Act. So PMLA offense could also get attracted under that. So what we have to take away from that, so we have to note that the screening of importance of the screening, continuous monitoring of our clients and comparing that with this designated list, that is also important. Because as I said at the beginning, when we are establishing the relationship, we are not aware about such involvement of our client as an unlawful association. Subsequently, the things are going to be developed, and because of that, the government may declare that any particular agency, any particular entity as an unlawful association. And if you are not going to take the note of that, and if we are going to continuously going to provide the services, playing with their properties, then there is a risk of attracting the Section 11, and by attracting the Section 11, we are going to hit by these offenses of money laundering. So that is what we have to take care about that. Again, punishment for raising the funds for terrorist acts, Section 17 is also included as a schedule offenses under the PMLA. So what the Section 70s of this UAP Act talk about? So whoever in India or in any other country directly or indirectly involved into the raising of funds, providing the funds, collection of the funds by whatever sources. The sources could be the legitimate one or it could be the illegitimate one. And that is likely to be used for the terrorist organization or terrorist gang. But basically, this is very important for the financial institutions who are providing the direct financial services. But sometimes, as I said in the beginning, that there is a risk of the project financing. There is a risk when we are incorporating certain legal entities, because prima facie they may not be involved, but subsequently their funds, their activities are going to be indirectly going to be related with that terrorist activities. And because of certain limitation, we may not able to vouch or verify for those things. Uh, and that is again a risk. And for that purpose, again, I'm repeating many of the times in this webinar that continuous monitoring of these transactions, continuous monitoring of what is happening with that particular client, that is the profiling, whether the transactions which are there for which we are providing the services are matching with the profile of that particular legal entity or that particular client. That needs to be observed continuously. And one of the important tool which is always suggested is the media analysis, media report analysis. That is always we have to consider now reading anything related to our client in news or in any other media platform. We cannot able or we are not afford to ignore it, right? So we have to take a cognizance of that. We have to do our own due diligence, and accordingly we have to think about our client relationship. We are not going to think about what is his role or not role in any other activities, but as far as our services, as our relationship with that particular entity or person, the review of that is essentially be required, and that is also one of the requirement under this KYC policy. So if you see that there is a risk of directly or indirectly any of the legal entities to which the services are going to be provided, they are indirectly also associated with certain terrorist organization, then it will be attracting the provision of Section 17. And through that, the PMLA provisions of offenses of money laundering is going to take a hit on us. Section 17 is again talking about that if somebody is doing that, it itself is an offense under Section 17 of this UAP Act. So, as I always said, there could be two types of the action. Those are going to be initiated, one under the PMLA and the other could be under the UAPA. So, all that punishment part is also mentioned as an offense under Section 17 of this UAP Act. Section 18 is about the conspiracy as an offense, right? So what is mentioned here? Whoever is conspiring, attempting to commit, advocating, abetting, advising, incites directly or in which are incites or directs or knowingly facilitating the commission of terrorist act. Any act preparatory to the commission of the terrorist act shall be punishable. So any act preparatory to the commission of the terrorist acts, that's where that advice, their abatement, the directions, the preparatory things could be involved into the financial matters, fundraising related activities, financing related activities, financial services related activities. So that could be attract if somebody is getting advised, somebody is getting, because what is happening, the criminals are getting smart enough, the terrorists are also getting smart enough, they are using smartly the services, even though the practicing unit may not be knowing about it, but the criminals or the terrorist organization, they are smart enough to get use of this practicing unit, so that they can claim, they can say that all these things are legitimately done. They can say that it is this is untented kind of an activities which we are doing, but beneath of that, behind that, certain conspiracies going on, certain things are happening which is helping the terrorist organization to do their unwanted things, right? So, as a preparatory act, the funds or the financing, of course, comes into the picture. And when we are providing any such type of an consultancy, again, we should be very careful enough. I hope that many of us may not going to be involved into that. Unfortunately, if somebody is going to be involved, that is really unfortunate things. But we need to understand the risk. The basic objective of today's discussion is revolving around is that as a practicing unit, we should be able to understand this could be the risk. Now the risks are there because we don't know many of the times, because we are not having that much enough measures to go into the depth of any person. But yes, the risk needs to be identified, needs to be first considered, and then we'll have to develop the mitigation practices. And the mitigation practices are coming through the KYC screening and all these things, right? Punishment for holding the proceeds of terrorism, that is POT. So we discussed about what is POT, which is directly related with the property which is derived from the terrorist activities, or which is going to be used or intended to be used for the terrorist activities. And there, the diversion of the funds, siphoning of the funds, that carries a great risk, because and this is very important from the financial institutions point of view, and not directly for the practicing unit as a chartered accountant. But when we are in the services related to the project financing, and if those projects are going to be a failure one in the next futures, and the funds are getting siphoned off or diversified, and that turn into the proceeds of terrorism, then this could be the a risk, right? So any person who is holding that property which is derived or obtained by a commission of the terrorist act, holding any property which is going to be used for the terrorist purposes, or acquiring for any of the terrorist fund, all these things are now treated as a POT, and holding or relating with that is an offences which is included as an schedule of offences under the PMLA. Section 40, that is the last sections which is included under this UAP Act as an offense, which is a part of the schedule offenses. Offense of raising funds for the terrorist organization. So what is that? So if a person commits the offense for raising of the funds for the terrorist organization, uh, by 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 anyway, I mean, providing the money or any other property, not necessarily the monetary part always. It could be some immovable property which is going to be used for that purposes, because normally when we see raising of the funds, we imagine that the funds raising activities in a sort of a banking funds or the cash related matters, but it's not like that. Any other immovable property, even gold or any other property which could be used. And through that, the funds could be raised. Even the donation of certain properties that could be here under the risk, right? So, any of such property which is raised by any means, not only by monetary but any other way, and that is going to be used for the terrorist purposes, then it becomes an offenses for raising the funds under Section 14. So Section 17, Section 18, Section 40, 21, all these sections are important to assess ourselves whether there is a possibility of accepting the client which could be declared as an unlawful association. Screening is must. Activities to carry out the screening matching with that designated list. First, we should be aware about that designated list, right? And to get to know with the designated list, of course, the FIU and the central government, they are going to make it publicly. And for the banks, it is very routine practice that they are getting this list communicated through their regulators. Even the other agencies, other regulators are providing such a list. And many of the times it happens that it is one of the activity that needs to be performed as a part of the KYC. That's why we carry it out, but that is not essentially be the purpose behind that. So we need to understand the intention, why we have to carry out that screening, what is the importance of that screening, how to take that job seriously, and the importance of the profiling of our client. All these things are closely related, either with the Corruption Related Act or the UAPA or the criminal offenses under the IPC, because prima facie we may not be able to collect all such information, but there are other ways by which we have to continuously keep monitoring, watch, and then we have to assess the risk with the relationship with our client and the involvement of our client. Unfortunately, that may not happen, but if it is unfortunately happening, what further steps the practicing unit has to be adopted. So all these are the provisions, as I said, up to Section 40. Whatever the discussions were, those were related to this UAPA Act. UAPA Act is included as a schedule offenses, right? And that is directly related with the Section 3 of the offenses of money laundering. Uh, Now, the next part which I'm going to discuss, that is related to the weapons of mass destructions and delivery systems and prohibition of unlawful activities act 2005, that is WMD. Again, if one will be surprised that why, as a practicing unit, as chartered accountants, why we are going to discuss all these acts and all these things. First thing, I would like to make it very clear that this act, that is weapons of mass destructions and related delivery systems or prohibition of unlawful activities act 2005, in short we are going to call it as a WMD 2005, is not, you will not find that that is included under the list of the schedule offenses. You will not find the mention of this act under part A, B, C of the schedule offenses. But still, it is directly connected with the TFS, the targeted financial sanctions and proliferation of the financing. So again, this act is, even though they are not included as a part of the schedule offenses, but the activities, basically the activities related to the financing matter, proliferation of the financing things, that has been inserted newly under this act. And now the government has taken it seriously. They are spreading the circulars, they are sending the notices. The regulators are going to be made aware about the newly inserted sections. And this act is widely applicable to all practicing units. So compliance of this act is widely applicable to all the practicing unit, irrespective of whether they are falling under the RE or not. That is not matter here, right? So this act, as I said, is mandatory for all the financial institutions, all other the reporting entities which are mentioned under the PMLA. Of course, the reporting entities under the PMLA, chartered accountants who are going to be a reporting entity, for those also this is an important act. But the chartered accountants who are not going to be act as a reporting entity, they may not be falling under the categories under that notified services, but still, as a practicing chartered accountants, one should be aware about the provisions and they have to see the compliances on their part about these provisions. So first of all, what is this act is all about? Again, here I'm not going to deal in detail about this act, because Again, this is not a normal act which is related to funding or financial services related. So I'm not going to discuss in detail about various provisions of this act. In summarizing what this act is all about. So this act is to prohibit unlawful activities in relation to the weapons of mass destruction and their delivery systems and the matters connected there. So, and this act has defined the biological weapons. It has defined what is chemical weapons. It has defined the nuclear weapons and other technologies which are used for the mass destruction purposes. And if you know that at the beginning of this webinar, we discussed about this proliferation of financing, proliferation of this mass destruction weapons. So it is not necessary that always the activities of the unlawful associations are directly related with the productions. That may not often we see, but collective efforts are there to produce that weapons of mass destruction. So some of the persons, some of the entities might be involved into the smaller supplier of the such material which is used for this weapon. Some of the entities are going to provide the technology, right? The know-how to create that weapons of mass destruction. Some of the entities that may be going to provide some transportation. Some of the entities that may going to provide the necessary human resources. So in a way, collectively you will not find one entity who is involved into these activities, but there are a number of entities which may are engaged into such activities, and then collective efforts of that is coming as an weapons of mass destruction which is used in the terrorist activities. So when we are talking about that certain clients, certain agencies which are our clients, which are in any way are in supply or certain materials which could be used for this production of weapons of mass destructions, giving or providing the technology. So then we'll have to consider the risk that whether there is any association of those. Again, I'm not blindly saying that everybody is going to be involved into such activities. There could be very few persons, there could be very few clients that may be involved into that. But again, we have in our mind, in our thought process, that this is a risk that we should be understand, and we cannot keep blindly any trust on that purpose for our clients' activities. So we have to very carefully vouch and verify the things. And again, the profiling, ongoing due diligence, and on due diligence. And those are the things which has a meaning when we are dealing with such kind of an acts. Unfortunately, I should not expect, I'm not expecting anyone in the practicing unit is able to connect with that by onboarding any of the client, but unfortunately these things happen. Then this could be the provisions which one should be aware about. That's the limited purpose which we have to keep in thought right now. So that has defined all these weapons. What is the weapons? Interestingly, the activity is also what are the relevant activities, that is also defined. So it could be handling, operation, maintenance, storage, dissemination, anything related to that. As I said, right from the technology, right from the supply, right from the transportation, human resources, all these things, which are specifically related to the production of these weapons of mass destructions. Now, here technology, not necessarily the mechanical technology, right? Because once we say that these weapons may require certain mechanical technology, of course mechanical technology is considered here for the technology purposes, and apart from that mechanical technology, the technology in the form of goods or in the form of software, the technology in the development or carrying out of any industrial or commercial activity for the provision of these services. So even certain researches that is that is done by certain persons or certain bodies, that is going to act as a technology for this terrorist activities. That is also included in the definition of the technology. So not necessarily all the clients may be again involved into that, but those who are having certain risky ventures by considering these technology definitions and connections of that with the terrorist purposes, one has to understand the risk and accordingly see the compliances. So this section 12A, right? This is section 12A, which is newly inserted, and the compliances of that is now mandatory, as I said, for everyone. Whether you are reporting entity or not, that does not question here. As a practicing unit, as a bank, as a financial institution, all of them, they have to make the compliances of the section 12A of WMT, and government has issued the notification of that. I will discuss about that. And that is a very recent notification of September 2023. And accordingly, all the regulators now they are circulating all these things notification. They are making aware all their regulating members for the compliance of the section 12A, and accordingly the ICI is also taking steps to make the members aware about this section 12A, about the prohibition which is there under this section 12A, which is basically the financing purposes, right? So what is section 12A, which is inserted in this WMD, which we are going to talk about? So section 12A talks about no person shall finance any activity which is prohibited under this act or under that United Nations Security Council Act 1947 or any other relevant act for the time being. So it could be under the UAP Act also, or it could be any other act which could be prohibiting that the terrorist act, which could be prohibiting the related to the weapons of mass destruction and the delivery system. For prevention of financing by any person or any activity is prohibited, then what needs to be done that has been also given under section 12A subsection 2. So central government now has a power that if certain things are coming to their notices, then the central government can freeze the funds, freeze the other assets, freeze the economic resources that is related to the proliferation of financing, which are owned or controlled by such person, right? Or these economic resources are going to be used as per the direction of such persons or derived or generated from this kind of an activity. The funds or the properties which are derived are going to be used for the terrorist activities or for the production of these weapons of mass destruction. And if you look at the clause B of subsection 2, prohibit any person from making funds, financial assets, economic resources, and related services available for the benefit of persons related to such activity. So first, if any person is involved into such activities, the funds of or any assets of that, the central government has no power to seize that, freeze the assets. That is one part. But if any of the financial institutions, any service provider, which which is providing services to such person or to such entity, now the central government has a power to prohibit such persons to provide such services, to provide such funds or providing such financial assets or any other economic resources which are ultimately going to contribute for the production of the weapons of the mass destruction. So this is the section 12A, which is inserted newly in 2022, and the compliances of that has been made mandatory. And for that purposes, the Ministry of Finance, Department of Revenue, they have issued an order that is on 1st September 2023. And in that order, they have given a detailed procedure for the implementation of this section 12A, right? The procedure includes that there should be one central nodal officer countrywide. And as per this order of 1st September 2023, the FIU director, FIU here is Financial Intelligence Unit's director, now he is going to act as a central nodal officer, that is CNO. Now, the regulators for each sectors like the RBI or the SEBI or the IRDA, or for our purposes it is ICI, they have to appoint one nodal officer, because the nodal officers will be get communicated about such activities, and the compliance status of that needs to be communicated to such nodal officers, as and if these things are coming to the notices of practicing in it. So, reporting entities are defined as per the whatever the definition of the reporting entity is there under the PMLA. But again, I would like to mention here that is this particular compliances of this Section 12A is not only limited for the reporting entity, but it is carrying the compliance to be made by all other practicing units as well. So it is not limiting, because we may assume that since it is related with these terrorist activities, and thereby it is going to be connected with these money laundering activities, and that's why only the reporting entities are going to be covered for the compliances purposes. But that is not the thing. Even the other practicing units are also be equally responsible to make the compliances of the Section 12A. Now, the designated list, the persons or the entities which are involved into such activities, action against whom the central government might have taken. That's as we discussed under the UAPA, the central government has the power to declare that association or declare any entity to be an unlawful association. Similarly, the list who are involved into these activities of contributing the development or production of uh, uh, these weapons of the mass destruction, the list will be provided by the Minister of External Affairs, MEA. The regulators are required to make this list available to all the members, including the RE. And it is now responsibility of the REs as well as of all the practicing members to, to carry out the screening of our clients against that designated list, and to take the further action at whatever be there. So responsibility of the RE and the financial institution, so they have to verify the customers, they have to verify the clients against this designated list. And that is not only at the time of onboarding of the client, because again, that is one of the assumption which we carry with ourselves, that we have to conduct the KYC only at the time of accepting the client. But it is not like that. We have to, as a part of the continuous due diligence, online due diligence, which is mentioned under the rule 2005 of this PMLA, it is a continuous process, right? So, as per that, the screening needs to be carried out. Yes, of course, at the time of acceptance of the customers, but periodically also, periodically how that practicing unit has to define the policy for that, and periodically they will have to carry out the screening, matching of the client's name with that designated list. If such client unfortunately found on their client list, then they have to stop the financial transaction with such person. They have to inform the details about all these transactions with the CNO, Chief Nodal Officers, through their regulatory nodal officers. And if there is a reason, in case there is a reason beyond doubt, suppose reason to believe has some important meaning under the IPC, everybody I hope may be knowing about. So there should be a concrete reason. There should be a reason to believe that even though the person is not getting mentioned under the designated list, but if a practicing unit or the RE, they do have a doubt, and that doubt is beyond because of some reason to believe by certain documentation that they may fall under Section 12A, then they will prevent, then they not be allowed to enter into any conduction of the financial transaction, and also they have to report directly to the chief nodal officer. So these are the responsibilities which are now casted on all the RE financial institutions or the practicing members as such. So what is the takeaway for this UAPA, or even for the Section 12A of the WMD Act? So CAs have to take care. First, the CAs have to consider the risk. What is the risk? Risk is that our client may not be involved into such unlawful activities, terrorist activities, directly or indirectly. But due to the limitation, we may not be able to conclude some, but we have to accept that risk. And while accepting that risk, we have to take the sufficient measure to mitigate that risk. So the first thing is the KYC that is mandated. Second thing is profiling of our customer. Third thing, according to the profile of our customer, we have to assess the risk of our customer or the client. And according to the risk, we have to monitor the transactions related to the services which we are providing. So these are the important steps, and that monitoring or that assessing of the risk is a continuous process. It is not a one-time job. It needs to be done, as I said, at the acceptance level and at the periodical level as well. Most of the CAs are well versed with that. The banks or other financial institutions, they are carrying periodically KYC and they are frequently asking the questions related to the identification and the address. Similarly, now we will have to set up certain mechanisms, certain systems, certain processes to carry out that. So screening with the designated individual persons. And there is a risk that in this circular, in this order, government has given a cautious note that, as I said, the criminals or the terrorists, they are wise enough now to get the services used of the CATTs. And that's why they have cautioned that these designated individual, designated persons, entity may approach the chartered accountant for the services related to the investment consultancy, investment or entering into certain financial sectors. And that's what at the beginning, as I said, it could be the project related consultancy, it could be the financial advisory, it could be investment related advisory, or it could be related to any other matter related to immovable properties, right? So this, when we are handling such kind of an services, we should be wise enough to identify clearly the person. So one of the risks, as I said, that when we are providing this kind of an consultancy, specifically investment related, financial sector related, immovable properties related, or the project financing or incorporation of the legal entities. All these services we should be aware about, where our services could be used by these designated individual person. Designated again means designated by the government, central government, which are associated with the production of weapons to the mass destructions. CMA hold or manage the assets or economic resources of the designated individual or entities. Basically speaking, our code of ethics, ICI's code of ethics, they have clearly mentioned under section 350 of the code of ethics that chartered accountants are not allowed to hold or manage the bank accounts or any other assets or any other security of any other person, unless and until it is made compulsorily be the requirement of any other legal provision. Otherwise, in normal, as a practicing chartered accountant, it is not allowed under the code of ethics. So many of us are not in the services of holding or managing the assets or economic resources of any person, of any client. But if somebody, if some practicing unit is still providing that kind of a services, again, I may say that that is against the code of ethics. But if that, because this designated or this person which are associated with these unlawful activities, they may try to engage the chartered accountants to manage their assets, to manage their economic resources, or they may ask for this advisory or consultancy in these investment matters. So CA has to first identify those risks. They have to carry out all the support steps, as I said. And if they find that certain clients, I hope that could be very few, not anymore, the clients are appearing on their client list, then they have to immediately stop such transaction. They have to stop any services providing to such persons or the individuals, and immediately they have to report it to the nodal officer, right? So that is the responsibility which is casted under that. So we have to take utmost care while providing certain services. Basically, the services related to the incorporation or registration of the company, LLP, partnership, society, trust, or association of people. That there we have to take the utmost care to identify who are the individuals what is their purposes, why they are creating, why they are establishing these things. What is the risk in that? Because when we are incorporating, we are registering such legal entities, there may be the risk that some of the individuals, some of the entities which are designated, which are, you can say in a normal language, blacklisted, or which are directly having association with these unlawful activities, they may be named as a director, they may be named even as a shareholders, not forget about the directors. They may be contributing as a shareholder, that is also possible, right? So who are the shareholders? That we also always be careful about. They may be a partner of the LLP, they may be partner of the partnership, they may become the trustee, or if they are not becoming the trustee, they may become the member of the trust, or they may become the beneficiary of the trust, or ultimately the beneficiary of that. So we have to be very wise enough when we are registering any of this legal entity to identify the persons behind that, who is going to act as a director, who is going to be a contributor as a shareholder, who is going to be a trustee, who is going to be the member of the trust, and is there any association of them with this designated individual or entities. This is the area where we may not collect a lot of information. The client may not be able to provide sufficient information, and that's why there is a high risk that these things are getting correlated with that unlawful activities, because money laundering is happening by creating a large amount of web on the network, by creating such shell companies or such the complex trust wise network, and the siphoning of the funds, and ultimately going to be or getting used for for the terrorist activities or for any other unlawful activities. If you are having a doubt that any of them, these things are directly related or associated with these entities which we are going to register, then immediately we have to stop our incorporation services for such entity. And again, we have to report to these nodal officers. So there are only particular services where we have to be take care about. But apart from that, in generally also, the client acceptance or client risk is now we have to consider as a separate matter when we are into the practices. Not all of our clients are going to be fall under this category of suspicious nature, but without having the proper screening, we are playing with the blind game that needs to be avoided, as specifically providing this investment related services or the immovable property related services, and most specifically the incorporation or registration related services to our clients. So these are the various concrete area, I can say, where we have to focus upon to avoid the unwanted things to be taken action under this, either under the UAP Act or under the WMD Act. And we have to help to our governments, our society to stop this terrorist activities, terrorist functioning, and not to provide any services related to that. And if such things are coming to our notice, we have to report it to the concerned nodal officer. So that's all from my presentation related to these two important act. One of them was, of course, as I said, was directly related to the schedule offenses, UAPA. The WMD Act directly not mentioned in the schedule offenses, but it is closely associated, as I said, with the proliferation of financing, proliferation of the weapons of mass destruction, and the funding or financing related to that. And hopefully, the CAs are not going to be face any unwanted situation uh, as far as the compliance part of these acts are concerned. And that's the precaution, that's the things which we have to take away from this today's webinar. So Yaminiji, and that's all from my side. Now, if there any question or anything which you would like to ask, I'm ready for that.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a wonderful deliberation I hope our all members would be benefited a lot by this whole webinar and the learning. Let me just go through if there is any questions. Let me just check it out. Um, as of now, there are no questions. If any participants want to post question, they can directly post the question and I can see that. But as of now, there are no questions.
Yeah, I can understand that because this is totally a very new topic. I mean, whatever the language I am also speaking here, hearing that would be also very new to the practicing members, and of course, to get it know to understand and then think it all over, and then the questions would be there. But of
Yes.
course, right now. It's fine that if there are no questions. So I think we can.
We can conclude the webinar.
Yes, yes.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us in this webinar. Thank you,
Thank,
all the participants.
thank you.
Thank you so much.